This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Marriott's on the move.
What?
Marriott's on the move.
Again?
Marriott's on the move.
If you're dreaming about moving to a new city to pursue the life of your dreams, this podcast is for you. Moving 18 times in 23 years to 5 of America's top cities, I know it's not easy to make those decisions alone. I help you develop the dream, the plan, and the move, even if we need to get scrappy to get you there. I'll be doing interviews, career and city spotlights, and sharing my crazy moving stories, tips, tricks, and scams to avoid. Traveling to explore your dreams has never been easier. Now let's get moving. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am super excited to have you today. Meet my longtime friends, Katie and Lynn Else, twin sisters and a dynamic duo originally from Michigan with a rich background in corporate America, where they spent over 2 decades climbing the ranks in the tech and publishing sectors. Despite their success, they felt a deep-seated need for change back in 2014, leading them on a transformative journey of self-discovery and passion chasing that led to their B.E.L.I.E.V.E year in 2018, which I can't wait to hear about. Traveling the globe, attending energy and meditation retreats, and even starting their own vintage online store during COVID-19, these sisters have done it all. You might have seen my Be Bold, Do Epic Shit sweatshirt, which came from their online store, which I love, and I wear it all the time. Their store is arthurtwin.com. And now as creators of the B.E.L.I.E.V.E blueprint, they dedicated themselves to mentoring successful women, guiding them from feelings of being overextended and exhausted to becoming excited and engaged in life. I'm excited to dive into their inspiring story, learn about their adventures moving from Michigan to Illinois and back to their roots in Michigan again, and discovering how they are helping women find renewed purpose and passion. So welcome to the show, Katie and Lynn.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
I mean, we've been talking about doing this interview for a while now. So I am so glad we're finally doing it. So glad. So like I mentioned, I met you guys, couple decades ago.
We were all babies.
We were babies.
Let's talk about how long it's been.
But we look the same, right? We look the same, just as fabulous as we ever did before. But we all love self-development. Like we have always been into that. It's always been something. I mean, I've seen you guys go to the Tony Robbins events and like post about it. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, I want to go to UAP and I want to go to these things. So what are some other speakers you've gone and seen? What are some other, you guys have done a ton of these events. So tell me about that.
So we, in 2015, I went to our first UPW with Tony, my first one. And Katie was like, nope, not going to do it. I have no interest in that. And I was like,
I thought she was crazy.
Yeah. I was so excited about everything. And long story short, I got her to come with me to DWD, which is Date with Destiny, which is an amazing one of his amazing programs. It's a week-long program, and she loved it. So then we joined the his Platinum Partners. So that's where we started traveling. We did that for 3 years. So traveling around the world with him, going to all of his events. It was just a really amazing experience. So during that 3 years, we started working with different coaches. So we worked with Master Stephen Coe, who's amazing. He does pranic healing. He teaches pranic healing.
Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, we traveled with Joe Dispenza, and he's amazing. We went to Italy with him, and we've done, England. We went to see him in England. So 2 amazing energy experiences that we've done. And then we started in 2019 working with John and Christina Amaral, doctors John and Christina Amaral, and they're amazing. And I think that all of those experiences have really helped lead us to this point, because every single one gave us a different understanding or different level of understanding ourselves, understanding better communication. And then we started, I took a course in human design. Have you ever heard of human design?
just recently, my friend Nicole is super into it. Like,
Amazing.
share with the audience what it is, because I had never heard of it, and I feel like I hear all the things. So
Yeah.
I'm super into this world.
The best way that I can describe it is it's most people heard of like what's a Myers-Briggs or like the disc profile, all that stuff, where it kind of it tells you about your personality type. And I think you were talking about in one of your podcasts, Gretchen Rubin's the finisher
4 tendencies. Yeah.
So it's similar to that type of an idea where it just gives you a really much better understanding of who you are and how you work and then how other people work. So
it's like astrology and Myers-Briggs and like all these things. There's like 7 different modalities that
Myers-Briggs is not
Myers-Briggs isn't in it, but like 7 different modalities that are all put together, and it makes you understand yourself and understand other people so well.
Yeah.
Well, but as identical twins, and if you're watching this on YouTube, Lynn has glasses on, Katie does not, right? I've known them for a long, long time, and I even had to say like, who's who, right? Because but I'd be interesting. Yeah. But did you guys come up with the same thing because you're identical twins?
Yeah, so it's based on your birth date, your birth time, and where you were born, and then it filters in all of these different 7 modalities. And so we are the same, just because that's how it's based.
Because we're born.
But we definitely have different tendencies in it. So we're both 5-1 manifestors. So if anybody is studying human design, they would know what that is. But so we both are, but then she has different tendencies than I do. So
interesting. Is it like the yin and the yang, hopefully? Like
kind of, yeah.
Pretty well.
And I think it definitely helps us understand like how we handle situations. Like so to bring it back to a moving situation, had we understood human design when we were moving out of Chicago back to Michigan, we would not have had our biggest fight ever in our lives.
Yeah, it would have been much less stressful.
Well, this is where the tea gets spilled. Tell me more about that.
The type of fight, like,
people always ask us twins, they're like, do you guys fight? And we're like, not that often. This was a big one. And if we had understood human design and like understand how we work, it would have totally prevented, like we didn't speak for, was it 3 or 4 days?
Yeah.
She literally left me stranded without keys or a phone. She did come back and get me, but she drove away for a few minutes. But that would have helped prevent, like during that move, the stress and the levels of questioning the other person would have been totally, well, I wouldn't say totally eliminated because there is stress around a move just in general, but it would have helped alleviate it or allowed us to understand why we were reacting the way we were reacting.
It would have helped better. So it helps a ton with communication and understanding other people's motivations and your motivations. So that combined with some other modalities that we've learned over the last few years has really helped us like develop this program. But all of the experiences, like Katie talked about with that move, like it was the biggest move. It was our move home. So we
for 20 years.
Yeah, we're selling our house in Chicago and moving back to Michigan. So that in general was a stressful decision.
Yeah.
Leaving your comfort zone of where you've been for 20 years and everything that you've built up, you've done it. You've moved a few times.
You've done it a couple times.
Just a couple times. I mean, it feels so final though. And it's almost like you're grieving that chapter, but you're excited for the next chapter, but you're almost like betraying the next chapter if you're not grieving for the chapter that you're closing right now. So it's just like it blows your mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh. Yeah, I would say that, tying it back to your original question, we veered off a lot, but
ADHD. That's my fault.
So really, we have been working with Drs. John and Christina Amaral over the since 2019. Yeah. And just working with them and learning different modalities through them has been just amazing. And I feel like that has been kind of the last piece that between human design and then working with them has been like really this last piece that has helped us really feel.
It's why we relaunched.
Yeah.
Yeah. We ran 2019 and 2020. We ran the program.
We felt like something was missing.
And so the last couple of years really honed in on some of that stuff. And that's why we decided to relaunch. It just got too loud for us not to relaunch.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I feel like there's that kind of disconnect everywhere. It's like you have this internal disconnect, or you have something happen or jumps in your way and you're like, okay, I'm done. And I'm feeling like a lot of people are super all or nothing and can't pivot or can't pull it back.
Yep.
So yeah, I can't wait to talk. Well, let's talk about it.
Boom. Play it.
Have you ever listened to a commercial on the radio or a podcast and thought, I could totally do that? Well, I am challenging you today. Being a voiceover artist is an amazing side hustle that can be done from the comforts of your own home. Heck, it can be an amazing career. Just ask Jesse Carroll. Jesse's got over 1,000 voiceover credits to his name. Ever watch Backroad Truckers? He's the narrator. He's also done a ton of commercials for brands you would definitely recognize. If you're ready to try your hand at voiceovers, go to marriottsonthemove.com and head to my favorites page to learn more about his new digital course and coaching package. If you use code MOTM, you'll get 20% off at checkout. Have you heard of Monat or Modern Nature? I hadn't either before my friend Monica was raving about their skincare products that she's obsessed with. I took their hair quiz to find out which product line would be best for me, since I just happened to be looking for new shampoo and conditioner, and I signed up for their VIP package that got me a little bit of everything to try out. Turns out they are the first anti-aging hair care line in the world, which I didn't even know was a thing. And their products are gluten-free, vegan, and Leaping Bunny certified, which means they're never tested on animals. Now I'm obsessed with their rich formulations that feature botanical extracts, essential oils, and other naturally based ingredients, and I want to share those products with you. I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can hit the faves page on my website. It's safe, EU approved, and clinically tested by third parties. So essentially, robustness approved. Now back to the show. Tell me about B.E.L.I.V.E Blueprint.
So it's kind of a blend now. So originally we had created it as an in-person retreat, and then COVID-19 happened. We signed the contract. We signed the contract.
Not so
to have
fast.
it at the place.
Yeah.
And literally COVID got announced like that day, like 2 hours after we signed the contract. So, canceled. Everybody knows how that goes. That got canceled. And so we pivoted it to an online course, and we pivoted it and ran it for 2019 and 2020. Okay. But it always felt like it was missing something. And so what we do is it's broken up over it's the B.E.L.I.V.E framework. So it's B.E.L.I.E.V.E. So B.E.L.I.V.E. And it goes through and helps you really understand as it's geared more towards successful women, but we have had so many people who have gone through it and say, can you teach this to my husband? Can you teach this to my kids? Can you teach this to my husband? So it definitely works for everybody, but our target is successful women.
Okay.
Who we know, like we've all done it. Like we work so hard to be successful, and the things the decisions we've made to achieve success in our careers aren't necessarily the same decisions you would make to feel purpose and fulfilled in your life, right?
Yeah.
And so we've taken all of the things that we've learned over the last 10 years and put them into a framework that's more consumable, right? So you don't have to go spend 10 years to learn this stuff.
Yes.
We have taken it, and a few people who are from the Tony world with us have taken it and said, "Oh my gosh, I've heard like this concept before, but you put it in a way that's so different." Because there's also, as women, we consume things differently and we absorb things differently. And so when it's very like this masculine energy that's coming at you sometimes, and especially being successful, career-driven women, especially in technology, right?
Male-driven to the 10th degree. Yeah.
There's just a different energy to it, but we can turn that on and off, right? And so as you're making these decisions, oftentimes women, and I'm going to speak for myself when I say this, but I think I can speak for a general too. We choose from the two decisions that are put in front of us, instead of looking at it and saying, but I don't want either of those.
Right.
but we don't know necessarily what it is we want. It's
Right.
hard for us to say no. And I guarantee this comes up a lot in moving. Like I'm unhappy here, but I don't know where I want to go to, right? So that's why I don't come to you, right?
That's where ChatGPT has been coming in real handy. I'm like, okay, tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Put it in a list. And I go to ChatGPT and I'm like, where on earth could somebody live for all of these things? Because usually it's like they know what they don't want, right? But
Yep.
they don't know what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
Yeah.
that's actually a really good point, because that's a huge part of this is like, if I asked you what you want right now, you can tell me all the things you don't want.
Totally.
It's like you can literally sit here for 20 minutes and tell me all the things you don't want, but you can't pinpoint what you do want. And that's one of the things. So the first thing is helping people understand why they've made the decisions in the past, why they do what they do, or just how they make decisions. Because that was pretty eye-opening for us too, was even just understanding how we make the decisions we make, like what contributing factors are in there. What are the things that like make us do and say the things that we do when we're making decisions? So that
you're the bias that comes from like all the things you learned when you were growing up and all that stuff. Yeah.
And then working into, okay, how do you actually figure out what you really want?
Yeah.
And you shed a lot of the things that are contributing factors to why you've made the decisions in the past to actually say, no, this is what I want. And then we go into like what your language, how you're talking to yourself, how you're engaging with other people, the things that you're putting out there, etc.
What you're focusing
on. And then how your internal world, like how your thoughts and your internal interactions with yourself and with other people impact like your outer world and your inner world interact, which is actually, it's a lot of people don't recognize how impactful that is.
Oh yeah.
So
it's an intersection.
We've actually been told that part was like a holy moly moment.
Thanks for keeping it classy, San Diego.
There might be kids listening.
Right, this won't be an explicit episode.
It's a daytime show, kids.
Yes.
And then like how to take it back into the world, because that was a big piece. And what we've been told so much is that the awareness piece is amazing. But if you have no steps that you can take with action, then the awareness can be almost worse sometimes. It's like, now I understand why I make these decisions, but if I don't know how to change it, then what do I do?
What do I do?
I paused on that one too. What do I do? And so then, like, how do we actually like take the action? That's where a lot of people who have gone through it in the past have told us, like, the awareness piece is incredible because it's things that you didn't realize before. Yeah. But then the action steps that come with it, and those two together is really where like that secret sauce comes from. Because if you have the action steps but you have no awareness, then it doesn't. Great, you're going to repeat the same patterns. You're going to. If you don't know why you've made the decisions, then you know how to change it. Then the action steps don't actually help. They help in the short term, but they do not help with long-term transformation. So like that's the format with it right now.
Yeah.
It's available. So there's a DIY version. Then there's a masterclass where we actually teach it live. Okay. So there's a DIY pre-recorded for people who like really are like, I cannot commit the time, to do it live. And that's self-paced. You can do it however you want. And then the live retreats are in a spa.
Right.
Because we recognize how hard it is for the women who we interact with to actually take the time or give themselves the excuse. So it allows them to still have the content, still have the weekend, have all the things that they need from the program, but then also they allow themselves permission to actually take a little bit of time. Yeah. And it was pretty, at first people were like, why does it have to be a spa? This and that. We're like, this is exactly why.
Why not?
Well,
right.
Exactly. But it really is like, that's a big factor. Like how often is it so hard for the women who we are engaged with to actually say, no, I'm going to take a little bit of time for myself and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
So it kind of allows that non-guilt version.
There's no shame going to a spa, but also learning.
That's right.
Love it.
That's
I
right.
love it. Well, and I think that there's this like concept. So I listened to Jasmine Starr. She's the founder of Social Curator. It's what I what helps me do my posts and things like that. But she had a couple women on this week, and she was talking about the difference between like mentorship and sponsorship, and how women are completely over mentored, but you need a sponsor sometimes to help you take that action. And I think that like you guys having that intersection in your course and in your events is so imperative, because you can have all of these concepts, you have all these things, and you could feel that internal. And I bet this happened to you guys. Like when you figured out what was missing, you probably had this like sense of urgency, like, oh my gosh, now we have to get out in the world now and talk about it. But it allowed you to take action because you felt complete in that, intersection of what you were trying to figure out and trying to help women with, and then get them to take action. So what was missing? Was it the action part? What was missing?
So
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So much of this, and you've been in the self-development world, right? There's this like, just live with it, just move through it, just do it, take action. Yeah. But there was never this experience of feel it, right? So we lived in this, and we call it the band of fine, where no, I'm fine. Even though either you're miserable or you're super happy, like there was no range of emotions. So when we started really learning, and especially in corporate America, right? Yeah. It's sometimes looked down upon if you have a range of emotions, right? If you're really upset, how many times was I like, I would have to like go for a walk or go into the bathroom or go do something instead of being able to feel my feelings, right? Yeah. But then we talk about it, like that's the way we were raised, and you're everything's fine. So when we started learning more energy work and really learning those, how to actually have and feel true emotions, that's part of what, one of the modules that we talk about is like, write down your emotions that you have during the day. And then at the beginning of the program, most people have like 3 emotions. They're like happy, sad, mad, right? Or frustrated, right?
And usually it starts with frustrated, mad.
Right. Yeah.
Happy. But then
happy comes later. Yeah.
But really, like, what does that mean? When you say you're frustrated, what does that actually mean? So when we started actually learning how to define how we are feeling and feel all the feels, that was a huge turning point. And a lot of people are like, well, I feel my feels. And it's like, no, you feel the feels you've been told to feel, right? Yeah. The feels that are socially appropriate to feel. Yeah. And so learning that energy, and then really being able to speak about this stuff, right? We've been interested in, like, we took Dale Carnegie course when we were 13. Like, we've been doing this.
We were a Zig Ziglar family ourselves. Yeah, I know all about Dale Carnegie.
Wayne Dyer was on all the time.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I swear we grew up in the same household. We just, I am your third twin.
So it's always kind of been there, but we never really talked about it. And then, so I feel like the missing piece was, as we started feeling safer talking about this stuff, we started getting other people that were like, well, how are you doing that? What are you doing? And so the missing piece was really that confidence that came with truly understanding ourselves more and understanding why we did or didn't do the things in the past. Because it's so much like everyone's like, well, I did this, but what didn't you do? And so having that awareness was a huge differentiator for us. And like, we call it our hippy dippy journey. Like, as we were going through, like, we started getting into crystals and we started doing these things that like have always called us, but we kind of were like, no, we have to work. We're corporate executives. Like, we can't be seen. Like,
there was an identity that we held that did not agree with.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
This, and that's a big part of, in the program is helping women identify what identities do they hold. And, that part of it was a really big thing for us. Like that, a lot of the things that were frustrating to us actually were self-imposed. Not a lot of them, all of them were self-imposed. Like nobody told me I had to be a workaholic.
Yeah.
And I was miserable because I was workaholic. But instead of being like, okay, it's okay for you to make these choices and do these things, and you can still be as successful or more.
Right.
And that was the shift for us. It was like, wait a minute, I don't have to do all these things, and I can be more successful than I was when I'm miserable, but doing things because of the choices I made before. So that was a big shift for us.
Do you agree that was the
I do.
biggest shift?
Yeah.
That was what was missing.
Yeah, I do. And I think that we started to recognize the patterns of like, we would do things like we started a photography business in the middle of corporate, like when we were traveling and doing all these things, like, oh, how did I think I had time? But it was a hobby that then turned into, someone was like, hey, I asked someone, I was like, can I use I have to take some photos for my class. Can I, take pictures of her kid? And she's like, these are amazing. And then then all of a sudden, like within 6 months, we're literally being flown to the Caribbean to take wedding photos for people. Like, it was like so crazy. And then we got to the point where like, what are we doing? Now, I loved it and it was amazing. Don't get me wrong. But it was like, we recognized that we were chasing something because we were unhappy in what we were doing, but we couldn't pinpoint what it was. And so we kept trying to fill it with these other things that just made it more self-imposed craziness.
Well, and you would never guess. Like looking at most women, right? Everybody looks great when you're talking to them. How are you? Oh, everything's great. How are the kids?
I'm fine.
How is how's work? Everything's great. But then it's like, oh my God. But so many women that we talk to, at the end of the day, they're like, I'm too exhausted to, like, you tell me to start, follow my passion. I'm too exhausted to follow my passion. And I'm like, you're not exhausted. You're not resourced. And that is probably the number one thing that we have identified is so many of us have this like model we follow. Like we, and I'm going to probably date ourselves in this, but the whole like lean in model and all of these things that were like, here's all these things you need to do instead of just be. And that was such a big difference for us. Like we resource differently. Each person, even Katie and I resource ourselves differently. So unless you're looking at it and saying, I'm exhausted, but you're exhausted because you're doing too many things that aren't resourcing you. They're not lighting you up. They're not making you happy. You're not excited to do them. So if you're doing something, like let's talk about packing, right? I hate packing. I hate it. I can't organize. I can't.
That was the start of the fight.
Yeah, that was definitely.
Oh no, was it?
So we packed completely differently.
Yeah. So as an organizer, you can probably.
You and I would probably get along great.
Totally.
No. You guys have a mind that does things that make sense when it comes to purging, organizing, etc. I write my to-do list on the back of an envelope. And it says pack. That's my to-do list.
Mine's color-coded with a key.
I was going to say bullet journal, something along those lines. Yeah, I got you.
Totally.
I got you.
And so in the process, right, of packing and moving, I was totally drained because Katie was trying to get me to do it her way.
Yeah.
And she was drained trying to drag me along to do it her way. So when we finally sat down after the fight, sat down and she's like, I hate who I have to become to get you to do things. And I said, well, don't become that person. That's
another fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me do it my way. It's still going to get done, but it's just not going to get done your way because we're resourced differently. Like I need to look at everything. I need it all to be like, do I need this? Do it. And it's a long process, but it gets done. Katie is like, to put it in the box or it goes in the garbage. Put it in the box or like it's very clear. And so once we started recognizing like we resource differently, and this isn't like a lot of people are like, oh yes, I'm an internal or external person.
It's different.
Introvert, extrovert. It's very different. It's really like, how are you charging yourself? And so I'm fine packing things up if I can like look at things and be like, oh, look at this. And how does that, like I just need space, where Katie is like, nope, I don't want that. That goes in the garbage, right?
That gets donated. That goes in the garbage. That gets, call,
Right.
Nancy and be like, hey, do you want this? If you want it, you got to pick it up by Tuesday. But
So
I heard somebody say one time, like, I don't have a time management problem. I have an energy problem. But it goes to that, like, resourcing. Like, if you know when you want to do something, like, your energy is there. Like, like, if you are dedicated to that resource, you are going to get it done. But if you don't want to do it. So what's funny is I heard, I think it was like Brendan Burchard, like, had his own, like, productivity coach or something like that, which I don't know why he needs it, because he is like I think of him as like the productivity guy.
right.
But he was saying that, like, he was working with his coach, and the coach was like, so why are you resisting doing this? And he's like, I don't know. I had to, get some stuff done. And then I, like, walked into my closet and I felt like this was, like, unarranged and I had to, like, rearrange it. And she goes, oh, that's interesting. And he's like, why? And she's like, some of my most high performing, the people that I coach, the most high performing ones, have this, like, organization problem where they get distracted by organizing something in a room. And what they're really doing is, like, literally, that's one thing they can control, that they're comfortable with, that they know they're good at. So they can go to do that thing. But all of a sudden, like, when it comes to do the hard things, they don't have the energy to do it. Because they just did something that they know how to do and it's easy. So again, going back to, like, you resource things differently, that's something to, like, be aware of and lean into. And, like, that can be something that you can kind of, awareness is the only thing that I can, like, contribute that to. So, wow, that is really interesting.
I mean, and it's even in things like we said, like packing. Like, nobody thinks about, like, oh, I have to be resourced to pack. They're like, I have to have the energy to pack. But it's totally different. And it's not only physical energy. It's mental and emotional energy too. Yeah. And people don't think about that. It's like, I'm just going to put stuff in boxes.
Part of the framework is robustness. So it's mental and physical health. Like, yes, physically, you have to pack these boxes. They're not going to pack themselves unless you hire somebody to do it. And there are services with movers that, like, do it all for yourself. I like the control of being like, Joyce wanted this thing and I can give that to her and she can pick it up by Tuesday, or I could donate it, or I can, pack it. But I like the idea of having myself pack it. But again, like, if you're mentally not in the right place, like, something that would be so, like, non-emotionally attached from a object perspective can become such a big deal if you are not in the good physical vibration. Vibration's probably the only word, that you can, like, you change your vibration when you're doing things differently, when you're resourcing differently, and when you're, like, having that perspective that everybody doesn't have to arrive at the spot the same way.
Yep. 100%. And I did a post on probably last year talking about that. Like, it has nothing to do, everybody has the same 24 hours.
Totally.
But if you resource yourself the way somebody else resources them, and that doesn't resource you, you're never going to get it done. You're never going to have enough time, ever.
Yeah.
So if you look at it and you say, and human design actually helped a lot with that for us, because as manifestors, like, we need, we have on cycles and then rest cycles. And if we don't honor our rest cycles, then the on cycles feel very, very heavy. But if we honor those rest cycles, then all of a sudden we're like, we'll do it. We'll clean this whole house, right? And it's like in this record time, versus if we don't honor those cycles, then it'll take 6 times as long. We fight, and so when you start thinking about that in your life, like, how often are you with a coworker or a boss or a partner, a significant other, your kids, right? Like, a lot of people get triggered from their kids because they're not resourced in a way, because they're exhausted because they've pushed through, for instance, a rest cycle, right? They should be resting, but oh no, now I got to take the kids to soccer. I got to work on my proposal. I have to do my, quarterly report, whatever it is. And so they're not resting, and they're not resting in the way that is right for them. They're resting based on, I should take a bath. I do not like taking baths. I love taking baths. But not when it's like I'm forcing myself to take one. You know what I mean? Like, and so, but self-care is this. And it's like, no, self-care is sometimes saying no when you need to say no, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because how often you say yes to something and then it comes up and you're like, oh, maybe I should
I
have
knew
said
that
no
I
to
shouldn't
that.
have done that. Yeah.
Right.
I was feeling that I shouldn't do that. And I said yes anyway. And I hate this. I hate
Yep.
doing all the things right now. Yeah.
Yep.
No, well, so if you were like, I mean, you started this journey in 2014, right?
Yeah.
And I love that you guys had your Eat, Pray, Love year in 2018. Like,
I
I'm
mean,
still,
COVID literally is the only reason why we stopped, I think. Because we had to.
that's when I started my Eat, Pray, Love year, because I never was off the road. I was always, I mean, I'm multi-passionate like you guys. So I always had a million things that I wanted to do, which is even funnier because when COVID hit and I didn't have to like drive 6 hours a day for my job, I was like, I'm going to take all the classes. And then I like became a certified life coach and a professional organizer. And like I did Dave Ramsey's like personal finance coaching certification. I did all the certs. I'm like, so I didn't actually slow down, but I learned a lot about myself. That's for sure.
Yep.
But if you guys were early in your careers, like say this is, well, I guess no. If you were talking to your younger self or somebody that's about to embark on a corporate career, like what advice would you give them about being both mindful about who you are as a person and your identity, but also like getting stuff done? Like what advice would you give your younger selves, them,
So I think, I'm not going to speak for you, but I think for me, my advice to them would be nothing's ever permanent.
Yeah.
I think that when you start your career, you have this concept that like, and I did it too. Like you start your career, you're like, okay, I'm so excited. I'm going to do this and I'm going to, whatever. And you get like, you start out and you're super excited. And then you get like 5 years in, and you're like, wait a minute, how did I get to this point? But if I change course now, am I going to waste the last 5 years? No, you're not. Every experience that you've had, everything will contribute to who you're going to ultimately become. And even that's going to change. Because like that piece, I think, was a pretty big aha moment for me when it was like, if I shift gears right now, did I just waste the last 10 years of my life in my career trajectory? And the answer is no, but I didn't recognize that until later.
Because he had the golden handcuffs. I just had to explain to somebody what the golden handcuffs were, and I saw their brains just explode out of their heads, and I was like, now you get it.
Yeah.
It's hard to leave and pivot and do the things that you want to do because it feels selfish. It feels like a waste of time. It feels like you're moving in a direction that's uncomfortable. And we as humans are not comfortable and uncomfortable, know?
Right. Well, and it also feels irresponsible. Like, like you got to this point and it's like, is it irresponsible for me to do this? The answer is no. But the advice specifically I would give is like, nothing is permanent. You can make a new decision based on new information. And that's so important to honor what's important to you within that. And that part, I think, is like, when I think about it, I said this to Lynn the other day. I was like, I'm going to stop taking for granted the things that we know.
Yeah.
Because like, we'll talk to like a small business owner and we'll be like, okay, well, no, you don't need to hire 10 new people. You just need to make your people now more efficient. And they're like, what are you talking about? I need to increase my, like I was literally talking to someone and she's like, I need to hire 10 people. And I was like, for what? And she said, well, my sales, I need to, my goal is to double my sales this year. So I want to double my sales force. And I was like, you don't need to double your sales force. You need to reduce the non-profit or non-revenue generating activities that your sales team is doing now. And I was like, you need to hire maybe 2 people
like
to support your sales team to take that stuff off their thing. And she was like, what? But I didn't realize I even knew that. But I have that based on information that I had when I was, when I started
trained
our first team.
I'm in it now.
But it's like that information just felt very normal to me because it's like, of course, you don't hire 10 new people. You hire people to take stuff off people's plates.
Right.
But I took for granted that information because it was just information I learned when I was younger as a new manager, as a new leader. And so that information, if I hadn't done the roles I did then, I wouldn't know that now. And so it's recognizing that nothing is a waste. Everything that you have done, all the decisions you made will contribute to something now that then becomes one of your superpowers. To be honest, like you don't even know information.
And
until it comes out.
Out, and people will be like, how do you know that? And literally my answer half the time is, how do you not know that? But then I recognize like, I know it because we were in a company that those were the decisions we had to make. So there was nothing is wasted, but nothing is also permanent.
Yeah.
So that would be, I think, what I would start with younger.
And I also think, thinking back to what I wish somebody had said to me before.
Yeah.
Is it doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah.
And it's different than hard work. We are working harder now than we ever have in our life.
Yeah.
But it's not hard because we're enjoying it. We love what we're doing.
Yeah.
We love seeing the transformation of women. We love being able to do vintage. We love being able, like, all of the things, right?
Yeah.
So we are working hard.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between it being hard. It shouldn't be that every day you walk in, no matter what stage in your career, no matter what decision you're making, you shouldn't feel like you're strapping on boxing gloves to go into work. Right? That
Sunday
was like
scaries, the whole
that
sucks.
That means that you're chasing instead of aligning. Right?
Yeah.
If you're aligning, it's not hard. There's hard work that's needed potentially to accomplish.
You got to raise that vibration to get all the stuff done.
Right.
Yeah.
But chasing and aligning are two very, very different experiences. And I wish I had learned that really early. I chased a lot in my career.
Yeah.
And then what happens is normally, and this happens with everybody, when you chase something, when you actually get it, you're like, did I really want this?
That was anticlimactic. Uh-huh. Oh, I felt that too.
So then you get the title, or you get the raise, or you get the new team, or you go, and you're like, wow, this is still the same as it was before, because you're not aligning with what you want, or you're not aligning with what's right for you. So
everywhere you go, there you are.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, like it's funny because it's true.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, and also like leaning into the feelings too, like you said before, like it's okay not to be okay, but when you're not okay for a long time in what you're doing, that's when you take a step back and say like, do I really want to be doing this? And that's how you feel all the feels. Like, am I being irresponsible? Well, maybe not irresponsible. Maybe I need to save more money to be able to get out of this, or, but until you stop and like acknowledge the fact that you're having those thoughts more than once, you're having those feelings more than once, it's really hard to pivot and be okay with what you're doing and moving forward. And then your vibrations raise, your energy levels go up. I mean, again, you can shove as much stuff as you want to, time management wise, into a day. But if it's not serving you, serving others, or fulfilling you, it's going to be really hard to push through and keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the part, I think, when you get to the point where you're like, if you are miserable going in every day, then you need to understand why you keep making the same decisions.
Yes.
And that's the big part, is like understanding, because you can go, we fell into it. Like we left, when we were unhappy, and we went to new, cool tech companies that were supposed to be like amazing. And they were.
Right.
But we were the same person. We were making the same decisions.
And the tech industry was the same. Yeah, exactly.
And so the things that frustrated us ultimately showed up again. And so it's recognizing why you do the things you do, why you made those decisions. Because if you don't do that, that's that, like we talked about earlier, that's the action, or the awareness and the action. If you don't have the awareness, then you're just going to keep doing it. And we know that because we did multiple times.
And it's different, your energy. So like tying this into moving, when you are in a place like city-wise that you do not feel like you should be in, and you guys probably experienced this in Chicago, you were like, okay, I'm ready to go back home to Michigan. When you're in a place that you don't want to be in, it is also really hard to feel like you're moving forward. But if you put a plan in place, like half the coaching I do is like 6 months to 2 years in advance. Like people don't realize they are planning for years in advance. Like I know somebody, their daughter is moving, graduating high school in 3 years, and they are already taking steps to plan. But all of a sudden where they live, they feel a little bit better about it because they've got trips planned to go to these, like there's like 3 or 4 different places that they want to move to. So instead of like moving, they're going to go do a city POC and stay for a couple weeks and get to learn the patterns, like traffic wise, or see the grocery stores, or they're going to explore those areas and see how they feel today. Like, just because they liked it and they visited San Diego 20 years ago and they thought it was cool and they've had it on their bucket list to move there since, doesn't mean that that's still where you want to be today. So it's the same premise where you're in a place where you don't feel like you want to be. If you don't go out and explore and start preparing a plan to leave, you're either going to never feel content where you are, or you're never going to move. Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's the intersection of suck.
Yeah. That limbo is awful.
That's the band of fine, right? You're fine in that band.
Yep. And that's, that's
gosh.
really interesting, because you're right. We did feel that when we were in Chicago. Like, we had gotten to the point where we were like, Chicago isn't serving us anymore. And it's really funny, because for most of the time there, we were like, we're never leaving Chicago ever. We're never
the same thing.
We're never moving back to Michigan. And then it got to the point when we were like, Chicago isn't serving us the same way. And so are we just staying in Chicago because of the identity that we're holding, which it was absolutely true. Yep. And so we finally, and it was really funny, because we kept saying, we're going to sell the house for like 5 years. We were going to sell the house.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when we recognized it was the identity that we were holding on to, we were like, all right, we're out. And like,
Our house sold in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We're like, oh wait, no, okay. But it had been on the market for a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So it had been on the market for a year.
Because we were holding on to it, especially energetically. We had not released.
No.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that, like, within that, but then as soon as we were like, no, you know what? We are ready to leave Chicago. We didn't know where we were going. And that was an interesting thing. And like, I love that you help people with this. And had I known, I may have contacted you earlier. 5 years ago. But like, when we were like, no, you know what? This isn't serving us anymore. We're not tied to an office anymore. So what is, like, why are we in Chicago? And there's so many beautiful things. I love Chicago. I don't want to live in Chicago anymore. I don't want to live there anymore. And so when we were like, you know what? We were ready. We're like, you know what? We're going to sell the house. Everything went into storage. And that's when we finally were like, okay, now we can just go travel. And so everything went into storage, and we were like, let's go. And that was such a different feeling and a shift.
Yeah.
Once we actually admitted to ourselves, Chicago wasn't serving us anymore. And it was okay to jump without knowing where we were going to go. We were looking at Austin. We were looking at Idaho. We were looking at Colorado. We were looking at all these things. And then ultimately Michigan is where we landed, back where we're from. But it also took us 2 years to find a house here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, the process is like, it's okay to have unknown, but it's really nice to have a plan. Like, I love that you have a plan.
But I also think, what happened with us too is that we kept needing, and I love your idea of the proof of concept, the city proof.
Yes,
I love that idea.
Thank you.
I think everybody should do that just in general. Like, I even if you don't necessarily think you want to move there, like, there's times that, like, in our travels, somebody said, always go to the grocery store if you really want to know the area.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so even when we travel, like, we would go to the grocery store, and like, it helps you, because just the path to the grocery store helps you understand the city more, right?
Oh yeah.
But I think that what was happening is we were trying so hard to know where we were jumping to with this finality, this feeling of like, it's so final, that was like blocking us up. So when we're like, you know what, we're just going to make this decision that we're ready to sell the house. And then we've always said we wanted to, like, travel. We graduated from college, and 2 weeks later started.
I literally was like, Friday gone, and then started on Monday. It was like, I had no downtime. Yeah.
We never had that, like, travel Europe year, and we always were like,
year.
Maybe it would have been a different experience had we done that. But we're so happy with everything. We're so happy with how it all worked out. But when we decided, you know what, let's go pursue some of these passions. Let's go do. Now, I made the leap before Katie did.
Yes. I was literally pulled along begrudgingly.
Yeah. When I left corporate, like, we had always said we wanted to, like, do this small business consulting, where we were taking, like, what we had learned in our careers and help these small businesses. Because when we first naively, we thought everybody knew this stuff.
We thought entrepreneurs like had the secret sauce. Like, of course, if you started your own business, you must know what you're doing.
Right. And then we would be talking to them at these events and they're like, wait, how do you know that? And we're like, how do you not know that? Like Katie was giving that example. But so I was like, we'll be small business consultants. And so I started that business first because Katie was still working at the publishing company or running the publishing company. And we were sitting there and 8 hours later of Zooms in my living room. And I'm like, I should just be back in corporate. Like, this is not, I wanted freedom. This is not what I wanted. And so we nixed that in the bud real quick because we were like, I think that's what I want because of all my previous decisions. Instead of looking at it and saying, what do I really want? And it was like, I was in that spiral of like, I know what I don't want, but then it still didn't give me what I wanted. So being able to like make those decisions, like, especially when you're deciding where to move and deciding like how to do that, like taking that time to sit down and say, here's what I don't want because here, and it's almost like tricking your brain. And you were talking about before, like these shortcuts of like, you were talking about the dishes in one of your podcasts. I thought that was so funny, like trying to beat your time and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Whatever it takes, right?
I might need to start to do that. I might need to start
collecting data. Oh yeah. It's actually really fun until you break something. I'll just
Can I break stuff now?
Be able to look at it and say, what do I don't want this because I want this. That's kind of like this shortcut that we've had. Like when we're working with women and they're like, and we say like, what do you want? And she's like, well, she'll respond, or, if we're working one-on-one coaching and we'll say like, what do you want? Well, I don't want this. We're like, great. You don't want this because why? And then she'll say, well, because this, but I don't want this. And we're like, and we do like this cycle of like these continual questions, which I know that you have done also, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always an answer behind the answer. And then there's an answer behind that answer. And then once you finally get down enough levels, then this first question, this
not even
first reason is not anywhere near what the real reason is.
Right.
So being able to like really understand that, I think is so important, especially when you're talking about career changes, life changes, moves, like just dealing with like, where do we send the kids to school, or should we get a dog? Right? There's like
big transitions.
All of these decisions about why and why not.
Well, I love that you're like, you can help new graduates who are like, this will be their first move. Like going from like college, which still feels, even though you're on your own, like it still feels different. Like there's still a comfort level, right?
Yeah.
Then when you move to a city or you move away for the first time, like that's a big transition for people. Like I love that you can work people through that and like actually help, because that part is like a really weird part when you graduate and move. It's weird.
You go your whole life being told what to do. Like in college is no different because you get a set schedule, right? You've got, that the cafeteria is open from this time to this time, dinner served from this. I mean, like you literally go through from like being born to like when you graduate college, like kind of scheduled. And then all of a sudden you get out of school and yes, you're starting a new job, but they're like, okay, all the other things you want to do, go get them, Tiger, but just don't do it between, 8 and 5 when you're working for us. And then all of a sudden you're left to your own devices. That's why, like they say, I mean, at least we did in our company that we worked at, like you gain the freshman 20 because you've got vendors walking around, bringing you pizza and they're like providing lunch and giving you tickets to Bulls games and all these things. Like you're doing all these cool things, but you're completely out of control because that schedule and that like, path of transition has already been set for you, whereas now you have to figure it out on your own. And like, most people don't love working out and they don't love doing all those things, so they don't do them. But I just can't even tell you, I love the B.E.L.I.V.E. blueprint. Sounds amazing. Like I want to go to one of your spa weekend getaways because I think that this is like right up my alley. I knew you knew it would be. But so if people need to find you, or people want to find you, like how do they find you on social media? How do they sign up for the blueprint? Like tell us all the things.
So our Instagram handle is at B.E.L.I.V.E Blueprint, all one word, obviously, because it's an Instagram handle.
Yeah.
And the website is twinhearts.co, and it's not .com, it's .co. But
which I feel like sounds British and fancier. I don't know. I just always love that. Anyway,
it's the one that was available.
Yeah.
twinhearts.com was taken. Yeah. So
Okay.
Meditation. Apparently, they got there first.
Well,
it's a really good meditation. It's a great meditation. So I'm working on finalizing the digital. We're going to a new platform for the digital DIY one. So I'm just finishing up that one. But the week, like all of the events and everything's available. And ironically, you purchase it through arthurtwin.com, but you can get there either way through twinhearts.co or arthurtwin.com.
We're working on streamlining.
Yeah, we're going to streamline that. But the next masterclass starts April 27th.
Ooh, good. Okay.
Yeah, so the next masterclass starts April 27th, and the next spa weekend is in June. We're finalizing
is it in Michigan?
No,
we think it'll be in either Austin or Tucson.
Yeah, so we're gonna go. Yeah, we're checking out one of the spas in Austin next month.
Yeah.
To try and
we're doing a site survey.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's tough.
It's gonna be real tough.
Tough to have to do site surveys.
It's all market research.
That's right.
It's either going to be in Austin or in Tucson. But that's going to be in June. And then we also have a second level masterclass starting in May. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I will link these in the show notes once I get them. You guys, it's been great. I can't even believe we've already been on the phone for 53 minutes. And we were like, yeah, half an hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah,
we're cool.
Right, no big deal.
So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. As always, keep moving forward in the direction of your dreams. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, I could go on forever and ever about moving you closer to your dreams, but I probably should save some thoughts for the next episode. A big thanks goes out to you for making time for me today. In making time for me, you're making time for future you, and we're both grateful. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the podcast, download the episodes, and leave me a 5-star review. I would really appreciate it. In return, if you go to my website, marriottsonthemove.com, and register for the Monday mailer, I'll send you a free Fred workbook to get your journey started. This is also where you can find all the show notes and all the ways to get in touch with me. A special thanks goes out to Rogue Media for its wisdom and partnership. Until next time, friends, keep moving forward towards your dreams. Oh, and the legal stuff. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I am a certified coach, not a licensed therapist, and this is not meant to replace the professional advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals. This is solely my perspective based on my own experience and training. Okay, now it's over. For reals. Bye for now.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.